So Katrina is asking, hello, my name is Katrina. So I'm starting a journey in the Word about what man can eat. I know mammals, herbs, plants, fish, but how do I find the answers to a biblical diet? Thank you.
Hi, Katrina. That's an excellent question. And just going to do like a quick run through of some of the main verses. And I'm not going to have time to address the ones that probably critics would cite. Yes, there are other verses that they claim say certain things, and then I would have responses to those. So if critics do want to chime in, that's fine, and we'll be happy to talk about those. Feel free to send it as a question, and then we're happy to address it. But let's start with Genesis and Revelation, the two bookends, and these I think give us the best insights into God's ideal. We see in Genesis 1:29, starting at verse 29, says, "And God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food." So basically, plants, trees, fruits, that's going to be your main food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird in the air, and everything that creeps on the earth in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food, and it was so. So God gave plants basically as food to all creatures. All creatures were supposed to eat plants. Plants exist to make things pretty, to hold the ground in place, but also to provide food for all of us creatures. And if we flash forward to then, what's things going to be like when after the second coming, and especially after the millennium, what's that going to be like? We're going to see in Revelation 21, verse 4, it says, "And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor pain." So if we're continuing to butcher cows to have burgers, killing chickens to have chicken breasts, all these things, are we going to continue to do that in heaven? The answer is probably not. And then we also know the verse in Isaiah 65 where it says, "The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox." And then it goes on to say, "They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain." And this should not be surprising. We're dealing with the God of creation, the God of life. And this God cherishes not just the life of humans, but also the life of the animals. And animals are often referred to with language very similar to humans when it talks about kind of the spirit and their status in terms of the value of their life. So I obviously they're not in the same plane as humans, but they're still valuable to God. And so that's the starting point, and that's sort of the starting point and the end point. Animal life is important. God doesn't want anything getting hurt. Then we see in Genesis 7, this is leading into the flood, or leading up to the flood. God tells Adam and Eve, tells Noah that, you shall take with you, this is Genesis 7, verse 2, you shall take with you 7 each of every clean animal, a male and his female, 2 each of animals that, and then 2 each of animals that are unclean. So here we see this reference to animals that are clean and animals that are unclean. And this is significant because a lot of people say that this concept of clean and unclean animals starts with Leviticus. And that was just for the Jews. But we're seeing here, even before the Jews, when we're still talking about God's covenant to Noah, in a sense, all his descendants, which we are, here God is already drawing a distinction between clean and unclean. And if you go back to Cain and Abel, what are they sacrificing? Or Cain was supposed to sacrifice? It was a lamb. And so God, I would say, even back then, even at the very beginning, had this concept of clean and unclean animals. Now, things get a little bit confusing after the flood, because we have in Genesis 9, starting at verse 3, where God blessed Noah and his sons, it said, "Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs." And then he says, "But you should not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. Surely your lifeblood I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast I will require it, and from the hand of man." So some people say here God is giving access to all animals to eat, and that could make sense where there probably would not be a lot of plant life around the earth right after stepping off of the flood. You need to give the plants some time to grow back. And also, the earth is horribly cursed now, triple cursed. And it's not going to provide the same nutrients and things maybe. So maybe God's saying, okay, like it makes sense maybe to start supplementing your diet a little bit with meat, perhaps, given your circumstances. But coincidentally, around this time, man is allowed to eat animals. We see the lifespan just shortening drastically. So we go back to, okay, there's God's perfect will and the God's permissive will. Maybe God might permit eating animals. Maybe God permits eating any animals. It's not necessarily going to be a sin, but is that going to be best for you? Is that going to be what's going to lead to best results for you? And a lot of people fix on what they could get away with rather than actually what is best for them. Can you eat a mountain of sugar? Of course. Okay, but that'll have consequences. You can eat a mountain of salt, of course, but that could be potentially deadly. Everything has to be in balance, and we should always, I would think, want to strive for the best possible health outcomes. And again, we're seeing here, God emphasizing, don't eat the blood. This continues even in the book of Acts, Acts 15, starting at verse 28. There's advice given to the new Christian church. What can you do? What shouldn't you do? And the thing that's really focused on there for the new church is avoid eating blood from strangled animals. It's amazing. That still carries over. And that's something we just don't talk about. My church doesn't talk about it. I never hear anybody really talk about it. I know some people say that the meat we eat really doesn't have blood in it, so I'm not going to claim to know an expert on it, but it makes sense because of all the disease, all the cancers, all these things that are there inside the blood. And then God also recommends not eating the fat too, which we all know there could be a lot of bad things eating. Also the fats of animals. So I mentioned lifespan starts shortening now after Noah. And then we come to Leviticus, and in Leviticus 11, God gives this list of animals to eat. And he says, these are the animals which you may eat among all the animals that are on the earth. And why is God doing this? Why is he restricting the diet of the Hebrews? And there's a lot of reasons. He's trying to set them apart from the nations. He's trying to teach them the concepts of clean and unclean and holy and unholy. But there's also this other reason. When God is creating them as a people in Exodus 15:26, he says, if you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments and keep all of his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you, which I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. I mean, God's all about health. He wants us to be in best shape. So when we're following his health laws, it's for our own good. It's not because God wants to deprive us, but he's telling us, hey, as your creator, I'm giving you the operating manual for your body and for your life so that you'll have the best optimal outcome. I mean, yeah, you could put water in your gas tank and your car's not going to do so hot. Or you can, accelerate really quickly, brake really quickly, and that's going to, again, shorten the lifespan of these parts in your car. And your manual might explain these things. Same thing with God. The Bible is the owner's manual for our lives. And God is showing us how to get the best outcomes with it. Not because he's a dictator, but because he loves us. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm just blown away by how many people want to rebel and push back against this. And how dare you take away this animal from my diet and this thing from me. God wants you to have the best outcome because he loves you. It's as simple as that. Revelation 11:18, it says that you should reward your servants, the prophets and the saints, and should destroy those who destroy the earth. And I have to think about it's so sad that as Christians, we tend to feel like we got to really push back on conservation movements, push back against efforts to protect the planet, push back against efforts to help preserve the lives of animals, when in reality, that would actually be something God wants his people to do. And I think we should be leading the charge, not with these false environmental movements that are actually more about controlling people. If we were at the forefront of saying, we really should be cleaning our air, we really should doing our best to protect animals, like I think we would have a lot more credibility as Christians. We would be more in alignment with God, and then be healthier too. We talk about all the time at our home just how we're blown away how much our air or water, everything, our food is just making us sick, and we can't really afford nowadays to just tinker around and abuse our bodies, because we're just being attacked from all other sides as it is. And so looking into the health laws that given in the Bible, the animals that are clean and not clean. The general rule of thumb, if you want to eat animals, it would be things like cows, sheep, chicken, quail, things like that. And then scaled fish, things like the bottom dwelling fish, blanking on the name, catfish, stuff like that would be considered unclean. There's an interesting debate about whether ducks are covered, but at the end of the day, if you could even get away from meat or minimize the amount of meat you eat, you might see better outcomes. But always experiment, and definitely realizing we have to supplement these days, just as it is. I'm talking about even with the supplements. So hope that is helpful. Tina, Wendy, anything you'd like to add? I'm sure you guys both have a lot of thoughts.
I think you covered most things.
Okay.
Tina?
I think you covered it very well. But yeah, and I'm sorry, I was having some technical issues. I don't know if you mentioned anything about Daniel chapter 1 and Daniel's.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah, just
talk about that.
Sorry. No, you're fine. I would just say, when a lot of people take the Daniel challenge, and where basically Daniel, he comes to Babylon out of Israel. They're taken captive, and the king says, eat my meat and drink my wine, and he says, I'm not going to defile myself. I'm not going to put these, unhealthy things in my body, and so he requests to just try 10 days. Just let me eat pulse and water. Pulse is like plant-based food. Probably it was probably things like chickpeas, beans, lentils, something like that, and water. And he, after 10 days, the the person taking care of them looked at him and said, they're fairer and fatter in flesh. So, definitely I agree with, having a more plant-based diet closer to that, God gave us at Eden. I know that, it's not a sin to eat meat, but I think it's definitely something we want to do in moderation with, you know, some biblical principles with it, but making sure you're getting plenty of plant-based food along with that in your diet, and not eating a bunch of processed stuff. Because sometimes people are like, "Oh, I'm vegan," and I'm like, "That doesn't mean you're healthy." They're eating
That's
Pop-Tarts.
actually a good point you
Pop-Tarts
made there too. And it's not just being vegan. I think the closer you go to eating food as God actually made it, the better outcomes you get.
And making sure that you are meeting all of your nutritional requirements, because a lot of people who decide to follow a plant-based diet thinking that this is what the Bible is teaching will often end up neglecting entire food groups that are essential for health and well-being, and we don't want to see that happen to people. So make sure that you are eating a properly balanced
Very
diet,
broad.
whichever way you go. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I remember somebody like, "Oh, I'm vegan now." I'm like, "What were they eating? French fries and soda." I'm like, "I think you're eating burger at this point." So yeah, definitely you want to be, have God's wisdom as you make your food choices, because you want to put fuel in your body that helps you feel the best you can. And that's different for everybody too. And so it's not one diet fits all either.
That's a
Some
very
people
important
do.
point.
Very important point.
Yeah, and so that's something I know I like, because for me, like, I don't do well eating meat, and I don't do well eating dairy, but other people really do need it. And so, it's not for me to look down on anybody or think, "Oh, I'm more holy or something," because I eat more greens, I eat more greens than anybody I know, but that doesn't make me a better person or a better Christian. It just means that this is what my body I know needs based on, you know, based on my experience. But I know that people need other things, and so we have to just know what's right for us, and be respectful and loving, and understanding that other people might need other things than we do. So yeah, for sure.